Hey everyone, welcome back. So if you think you know Olympic history, or even if you just appreciate a well-structured breakdown of, well, total chaos, you are definitely in the right place. Today's explainer covers what is widely considered the most bizarre, disastrous, and downright confusing event in athletic history, the 1904 Men's Olympic Marathon in St. Louis.
I mean, what happens when an Olympic marathon features dust clouds, rotten apples, a literal car chase, and rat poison? It sounds like a cartoon, right? But every single thing we are going to look at today actually happened. It's a massive web of poor planning, bizarre characters, and escalating chaos. So, let's just dive right into it.
Section 1. A Recipe for Disaster. Let's set the stage and look at the dreadful initial setup that basically doomed this race before the starting gun even fired.
Okay, so modern marathons almost always start in the early morning, to take advantage of the cooler air. Makes sense. But the organizers in 1904 St. Louis decided to start this brutal 24-mile, 1,500-yard race at 3 p.m. The temperature? A blistering 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 32 degrees Celsius, right during the absolute hottest part of the day.
And the course itself was an absolute absurdity. These weren't cleared, paved streets. The runners faced unpaved, dusty country roads while dodging crosstown traffic, delivery wagons, railroad trains, and, get this, literally people just walking their dogs. Worse still, race officials were riding in vehicles ahead of and behind the runners. This kicked up massive dust clouds, which caused severe internal injuries to an American runner named William Garcia. He was actually found unconscious on the course.
Section 2. An Unlikely Roster. You really have to wonder, who would actually sign up for this kind of punishment? Well, we had a highly unusual group of 32 competitors from 7 different nations.
Among these competitors were 2 men of profound historical significance, Len Toninayan and Jan Masciani. They were Tswana men who became the very first black Africans to compete in the Olympics. They just happened to be in St. Louis as part of the South African exhibit at the 1904 World's Fair. Both men had recently served as long-distance message runners during the Second Boer War, making them uniquely qualified for an endurance event, despite the completely ridiculous conditions.
Then we have the Cuban postman, Anderin Carvajal, whose journey to the starting line was basically a marathon in itself. He lost all his money gambling in New Orleans, hitchhiked his way up to St. Louis, and arrived in his standard street clothes. He literally had to cut his trousers at the knees to make improvised running shorts. Oh, and he hadn't eaten a single thing in 40 hours. That was his condition at the starting line.
Section 3. Dogs, Dust, and Apples. The starting gun fires, and the race naturally devolves into absolute chronological chaos.
The disaster escalated so quickly. At 6 miles, Carvajal secures some water from a water tower. By mile 10, the 1903 Boston Marathon champ, John Lorden, becomes violently ill and retires. At mile 14.5, the 1902 Boston winner, Sam Meller, drops out, completely disoriented from swallowing all that dust. And somewhere in the mid-race, Len Tanier, who was putting in a really great performance, is chased roughly a mile off course by an aggressive dog.
Meanwhile, our hungry Cuban postman, Carvajal, had a very unusual mid-race strategy. After being denied peaches by a spectator, he simply stole them and ran away. Later, he found an apple orchard along the route and ate some apples, which unfortunately turned out to be rotten. He got severe stomach cramps from the bad apples and literally laid down to take a mid-race nap. And the most incredible part of this? Despite the nap, he still miraculously finished in 4th place.
Section 4. The First Fake Winner. While Carvajal is napping, let's pivot over to the finish line, where a runner arrives at the stadium in 3 hours and 13 minutes, looking surprisingly fresh.
This brings us to a really fascinating question. How on earth did American runner Frederick Loers finish this incredibly difficult race in 90-degree heat, 13 minutes faster than the winner of the previous Olympics in 1900? It completely defies all biological logic.
Well, the answer is quite simple. He hitched a ride in a car. Loers actually dropped out of the race around mile 9 due to cramps. He hopped into an automobile, cheerfully waving at spectators and other runners as he drove past them for 10 whole miles. When the car broke down at mile 19, he simply got out, re-entered the race, and jogged into the stadium to cross the finish line.
And he came incredibly close to getting away with it, too. Alice Roosevelt, the daughter of U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt, had placed a wreath on his head and was moments away from awarding him the gold medal when outraged spectators exposed the fraud. Loers immediately claimed it was just a practical joke, but the Amateur Athletic Union didn't find it very funny.
They hit him with a lifetime ban, though they did actually commute it to 6 months later on.
Section 5. Rat poison to the rescue. So, with the fake winner disqualified, we shift our focus back to the punishing course to see what it actually took to be the real winner of this event.
The actual winner, Thomas Hicks, was subjected to a horrifying cocktail of supplements. With 10 miles to go, Hicks just wanted to lie down and quit. His trainers completely refused to let him. Instead, they fed him this mixture: raw egg whites for nutrition, Brandy for liquid courage, and Strychnine. Yes, rat poison. This marks the earliest recorded use of performance-enhancing drugs in the revived Olympic Games. Let's be absolutely clear about what we're talking about here. Strychnine is a highly toxic pesticide. Hicks's trainers gave him small doses of it to artificially stimulate his nervous system and literally force his body to keep moving. Hicks was in terrifying danger. He spent the final miles hallucinating, barely able to walk, stumbling blindly forward under the influence of literal poison.
The picture of his ultimate victory is just agonizing. When Hicks reached the stadium, he couldn't even stand. His support team carried him over the finish line, holding him up in the air while his feet mindlessly shuffled as if he were still running. He lost 8 pounds of body weight during the race and immediately required emergency treatment from 4 different doctors just to survive leaving the stadium.
Section 6. The Legacy of Chaos. Let's step back and look at the historical aftermath. We are finally going to reveal the dark, hidden reason behind all of this entirely unnecessary suffering.
14. Out of 32 athletes who started the race, only 14 men actually crossed the finish line. Because of the heat, the dust, and the complete lack of support, this event holds the record for the worst ratio of finishers to starters in Olympic history.
3 hours, 28 minutes, and 53 seconds. This was Thomas Hicks's winning time. To this day, it remains the slowest Olympic marathon winning time ever recorded, and it holds that title by a massive margin. It is exactly 29 minutes slower than the second slowest winning time in history. The ultimate dark truth behind all of this? The lack of water wasn't just poor planning, it was deliberate. Chief organizer James Edward Sullivan purposefully provided only one single water well at the 12-mile mark for the entire 24-mile course. He intentionally subjected these athletes to torturous conditions as a twisted scientific experiment on human dehydration. When we look back at the origins of modern sports science and anti-doping regulations, this specific race stands out as a stark reminder of exactly why those protections and limits on human endurance testing are so absolutely vital today.
And the chaos of that day still echoes in the modern era. Historian Clement Janty petitioned the International Olympic Committee in 2023, arguing that Hicks's win was just as fraudulent as Lorz's because Hicks received illegal assistance from a car and was literally carried over the line on drugs. Janty wants the gold awarded to the runner-up, Albert Corey, instead. However, the IOC has refused to revise field decisions made over 120 years ago. As impartial observers, we can see that the history books just remain forever tainted by the chaos of that day.
Which leaves us with one final, incredibly provocative question. If the organizers orchestrated the suffering as an experiment, the first guy across the line took a car, and the official winner had to be carried across the finish line fueled by rat poison, who really won the 1904 marathon? It's a fascinating look at just how bizarre early sports history could be. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions and keep learning.